Just imagine a book written in China more than 2,500 years ago. It's part military manual, part deep philosophy, and it's a text that has absolutely fascinated generals, CEOs, and world leaders for centuries. Today, we're diving into this ultimate masterclass on strategy, the art of war. So that's the big question, right? Why are we still talking about it? How can a guide about ancient warfare, with chariots and spears, possibly be relevant today? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, and here's a hint. It has almost nothing to do with fighting.
You see, its wisdom has jumped way beyond the battlefield. We're talking about a manual that's used for boardroom takeovers, for political campaigns, and yeah, even for the kind of daily challenges that you and I face.
Here's the key thing to understand. The author, Sun Tzu, was really a philosopher first and a general second. His book isn't just about battlefield tactics. It's about the deep psychology of conflict. And those principles, they work just as well in a business negotiation as they do in a military campaign. Because at the end of the day, this isn't really a book about war. It's a book about winning.
And that brings us to the most radical and honestly, the most misunderstood idea in the entire text. Sun Tzu's ultimate goal wasn't to teach you how to win a fight, it was to teach you how to make fighting completely unnecessary in the first place. Just think about that for a second. The real goal isn't to crush your opponent on the battlefield, it's to break their will, their desire to even fight you at all. That, according to Sun Tzu, is the absolute pinnacle of skill. It's about achieving total victory before a single punch is ever thrown.
And this is exactly why the book is, at its heart, a guide to psychological warfare. It's all about clever maneuvers, deception, and preparing so perfectly that your opponent looks at the situation and realizes, you know what? I've already lost. Your mind, that becomes the ultimate weapon. So, how do you actually pull that off? Well, before you even think about a conflict, Sun Tzu says you have to master the fundamentals. He lays out these 5 constant factors that govern every strategic situation. A leader who gets these wins. And just look at how thorough this is. This isn't just about troops and terrain. It starts with the moral law. Basically, are your people truly behind you? Then there's heaven, things you can't control, like the weather or timing. Earth is the literal ground you're standing on. You, of course, need the commander, someone with wisdom and courage. And all of it is held together by method and discipline, your logistics, your organization. It's a whole system. Master these 5 things, and you've already mastered the situation. Okay, so once your plans are in place, we get to the really fun part, deception. For Sun Tzu, you don't win battles with brute force. You win by creating illusions and completely manipulating your opponent's perception of what's real. This is probably one of the most famous lines from the entire book, and it is the foundation for almost everything else. It's not about who's actually stronger. It's about making your enemy think you're strong where you're weak and weak where you're actually strong. And this is exactly what he's talking about. The whole goal is to control the story. If you're totally ready to attack, you pretend to be weak and unprepared. If you're right on their doorstep, you create an illusion that you're miles away. You keep your opponent constantly guessing, constantly off balance, forced to react to a reality that you invented for them. This is where the psychology gets really sharp. Sun Tzu teaches you to find and exploit your opponent's emotional weaknesses. Is your rival hot-headed? Good. Provoke them. Irritate them until they make a stupid, angry decision. Are they getting comfortable and complacent? Perfect. Harass them. Give them no peace. You set the pace and you force them to play your game, not theirs.
Okay, so you have all these brilliant, complex strategies. But let's be real, they're totally useless if your team won't follow your orders perfectly. So how do you command that kind of absolute discipline? Well, the most famous story about Sun Tzu didn't happen on a battlefield. It happened in a palace courtyard, where he gave a king a demonstration that was, well, frankly, terrifying. So the story goes, the king dared Sun Tzu to prove his methods could work on anyone. So he gave him the ultimate challenge, 180 of the king's concubines. The task was simple enough, just to perform a basic military drill. When Sun Tzu gave the command, the women just giggled and laughed. Now, Sun Tzu's first reaction says everything about his leadership. He doesn't blame the women. He takes full responsibility. He basically says, if my orders aren't clear, that's my fault as the general. So he patiently, carefully explained the entire drill all over again. He gave the command a second time, and a second time, they just burst out laughing, ignoring him completely. And right here, this is the moment where all patience runs out, and a very brutal lesson in discipline is about to begin.
Sun Tzu then laid out his cold, hard logic. He says, look, if the orders are clear and the soldiers still disobey, then the responsibility shifts. The fault is no longer with the general. Now the fault lies with their officers. And who had he appointed as the officers for this little drill? You guessed it, the king's two absolute favorite concubines. Without a moment's hesitation, Sun Tzu ordered them to be executed. The king, of course, was horrified and tried to stop it, but Sun Tzu was firm. He replied that once a general is on duty, his authority is absolute. The execution was carried out. A moment later, the drum sounded for the drill again. This time, the women moved with perfect, silent precision. Not a single mistake. Sun Tzu had made his point in the most dramatic way possible. Discipline and authority are not suggestions. They are absolute. So, when you put it all together, the deception, the discipline, the deep planning, it all builds to one final essential truth. This is maybe the most quoted piece of wisdom from the entire book, and it's really the master key that unlocks everything else. This right here is the ultimate lesson. Victory isn't about luck, and it's not about brute force. It's about information. It's about knowing your own strengths and your own weaknesses, inside and out, and at the same time, having that same deep analytical understanding of your opponent. If you have that knowledge, the fight is already over. And that right there is why the art of war has lasted for thousands of years. It's not a celebration of violence. It's a guide to thinking strategically. It teaches us how to get what we want in the smartest, most efficient way possible, with the least amount of cost and conflict, whether that's in business, politics, or just our own personal lives. In the end, Sun Tzu reminds us that the true purpose of war is to create peace. So the real question the book leaves us with is this. When you look at the challenges in your own life, where is your opportunity for that supreme excellence? Where could you achieve your goals? Not by fighting harder, but by thinking smarter.